Hey guys, Jobin here. I want to talk a little bit about the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Now, for a while, I didn't think I was really going to bother to do a video about this knife. It's a little bit like reviewing Shakespeare's Macbeth. And I don't mean a production of Macbeth, I mean the play itself. What's the point? It's been around for a while, and pretty much everybody agrees that it's really good. What are you going to say about it? But I thought about it a little more, and there are a few points that I'd like to go over. Now, since these are going to be more or less negative points, I want to make it abundantly clear in the beginning of this video that I think this is a fantastic knife. It's one of the best knife designs on the market. It's executed extremely well, and it's just a fantastic blade overall, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay? So, now on to some little things that people tend to mention about this thing. One of the reasons I say it's so good is because there isn't really much that sort of sneaks up on you after you bought it that ends up being worse than you hoped. There's pretty much one possibly major issue, but it's blindingly obvious if you just take a look at the knife. And that's that the tip is very thin, very acute. Now, for most people, this will never be a problem. I don't think it'll ever be a problem for normal use or even a bit beyond normal use. But if you're the kind of guy who tends to jab your knife into things and apply any torque, or if you drop it open on a hard surface, you might lose your tip. That's just the nature of the beast when you start getting into something this thin. The only thing that might sneak up on people a little bit and, cause some annoyance or disappointment is the fact that these do seem to be prone to a tiny bit of side-to-side play. It's really, really small. Maybe yours doesn't, but mine does, and it seems to be a product of the way the pivot is designed. It's not a standard design where as you tighten up more and more on the screw, it just gets tighter. There's like a bushing in there that limits how tight the pivot can get. And you tighten the screws down all the way, and it is what it is. And this makes for a very, very smooth, consistent pivot. But I guess maybe if it's machined possibly literally microscopic amount too large or something, you can get just barely enough to feel it in there, which you might not expect in a knife in this price range. But I've had mine for quite a while, and it doesn't get worse. It really isn't a problem, but it is probably something worth mentioning to people considering buying the knife. One thing I've seen mentioned sometimes is people saying that it's not very ambidextrous friendly because of the locking mechanism. And a lot of people close it like this, pinching the lock between their thumb and forefinger. I don't really see this as an issue. I can actually do it lefty, but you do end up with a sort of precarious grip on the knife. So I kind of say this is only really a problem if you insist on opening and closing it that way. That's not how I do it. I close it pretty much the way I close a lock back. You just push on the locking mechanism with your thumb. That's it. Works fine from the other side too. And because it's got this choil here, the blade just drops onto your hand and you're fine. Take your hand out of the way, finish the close. One thing that actually really nice about this knife that I'm not sure, this is a feature that I don't think gets talked about enough. This knife has excellent retention. It's borderline impossible to shake open. And if you drop it while closed, it's probably going to stay closed. There's a lot of knives where that isn't true, and I really appreciate that. But at the same time, it opens very, very easily when you tell it to. It's actually one of the fastest opening knives I've ever seen that's not assisted. Now about the locking mechanism. There is one potential problem with it that I haven't experienced, but it does seem like it could happen. You might be able to get some dirt or grit down in there between the scale and the lock, and that could be a pain. You'd have to wash that out somehow, and it must be said that Spyderco is one of those companies that has it as their official policy that if you disassemble their knife, your knife, that you just voided the warranty. I almost feel like that's something I want to do a video about, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I think that's kind of stupid. I don't like it when companies say that, because while I understand that a lot of these are going to be collector's pieces that are just going to sit in a drawer or be used to open mail or something, knives are at least theoretically practical tools for the working world where they're going to get wet and dirty, and I think you should be able to clean them. But enough said about that. I think that's all the points I wanted to cover about this thing. It really is one of my favorite knives, and probably one of the best knives in its class and price range. Honestly, probably one of the best production knives on the market today. So, if it looks good to you at all, and you can afford it, get one. Try it out. You will almost definitely be pleased, I think. This is Jobin, signing off, saying, remember where your knife is.